Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. It's Rebecca Solworth from Empowered Survivors TV. Joining me today, we have Rose Davidson. Before I begin, I just wanted to share with Empowered Survivors TV, we are dedicated to sharing stories of survivors of child sexual abuse and these stories coming straight from people who have experienced this trauma, people of all ages, from different backgrounds, different religions, different upbringings. And we are sharing these stories as well as their family sharing their stories about child sexual abuse and the reality around the trauma. We also use a space where we share information and speak with experts in various fields that promotes the freedom and benefits to holistic healing. So thank you so much, Rose, for joining us. Rose is a young at heart with a no nonsense, no fluff attitude. However, she is a kind and caring, she has a kind and caring heart. Sounds like a bit of a paradox, but it explains her perfectly. Rose is a co-founder of Healing Through Love, which is a domestic and family violence awareness initiative started in Adelaide, Australia. And they hold a free annual Pamper Day event for survivors of domestic and family violence. As a survivor of childhood trauma in the form of sexual, physical, psychological, and emotional abuse, Rose knows firsthand the damage this can cause and is trying to bring awareness of these issues to the community. So I really, really appreciate you joining us, Rose. It is massive. It's such a big step and to be able to share your story. So thank you. I guess for us to begin, yeah, I'll let you go ahead and start.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for letting me come and tell my story. Yeah, it started when I was it started in 1969. And my father, wasn't a very loving man, but he started to show me a bit more attention than I was used to. And yeah, and it was, a strange experience. And, we'd do outings together, but he, at the same token, whilst he was being kind to me, and in one way, he was also psychologically abusive in another way, where, if I didn't come first in something, I just wasn't a good person or a good child. Because he always had to be number one, always had to get A's at school. And if you ever got below a B, you'd get a belting. It was just stuff like that I had to put up with.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, and it's just so my childhood wasn't an easy childhood, now, because I had a younger brother as well who my father just didn't like, and treated him absolutely horribly. My brother is so damaged now from his upbringing that we don't even speak any longer, because he blames me for whatever happened to him in his childhood, and I can't take responsibility for that, because it wasn't me that gave the abuse, but somehow it was my fault for not protecting him, and I lived with that guilt for a long time.
Yeah, wow, that is huge to carry. So in 1969, how old were you then?
I would have been just about to turn 10. So
Okay.
Dad and I used to snuggle under a blanket in the lounge room. It was winter time, and he'd touch me in places that I'd never been touched before, but it felt really nice. But I didn't understand those feelings. I mean, being 10 years old, you just don't understand them. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want him to stop doing them. But on the same token, and I didn't understand that they were not the feelings that a father was supposed to show his daughter either, because he told me that all fathers love their daughters like that. So he told me he was my father. And why wouldn't I believe that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
trusted him. So, yeah.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah, and it just progressed on from there.
yeah. Wow. And what sort of things before the abuse had started? Because I guess it's to share with the viewers a bit more about Rose. Who was Rose before the abuse happened? So before the abuse started, what did you enjoy
Mm.
doing?
I used to love to hang out with all my friends. We used to play baseball in the street at night time, as you do in Canada. That's where I was brought up. We walked to the lake, and we'd go swimming, and we'd take swimming lessons. And I was always angry, though. I was pretty much, I guess, from about the age of 8 or 9, I was always quite an angry person. I don't know why. Um, Maybe it's because of what was happening at home, but I was, if I didn't get my own way, I'd chuck a real tizzy.
Yeah.
So people used to think I was a bit spoilt, but maybe I was, because Dad used to shower gifts on me all the time.
Okay.
So he
And
was obviously trying to buy my love.
yeah. And did that change? Did that continue on with the buying of gifts and paying you attention after the abuse had started?
Yes, he did. Whatever he could buy me, he would. If I needed, if I wanted a new, because in the old days, you used to listen to your radio and you'd have a cassette player and you'd press record and you could, play your favourite songs. And so, if I needed a new cassette player, well, I'd just have to ask him for one. Or if I needed new clothes, but they'd never be the clothes that I wanted. They'd have to be the clothes that he liked.
Yeah.
So I didn't ever have a say in what I wanted to wear. And I used to hate the clothes he used to buy me because they were really awful.
Yeah.
They were
Would
they
you
were
say,
ugly.
and would you say, so it basically, everything that he chose, for you, it had to be his choice, even though you wanted it, it had to be his choosing ultimately of what it was that he was
Yeah.
going to buy. So would you, in hindsight, looking at that now, is that a behavior that, was part of, I guess, what I'm trying to get at here and to identify was it behavior that was part of grooming or trying to get you to I guess, yeah, was there a bit of
It was part of his way of just keeping me under control.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it was a controlling thing. My father, I finally worked out, was a narcissist.
okay,
Um,
yeah,
and he was a control freak. He just had to control everything and
yeah,
everyone, down to, the food we ate and, what time we ate, and Christmas celebrations, when we opened presents and how we had to dress, to open our presents. We couldn't just get
wow,
and open them in our pajamas. We had to actually get, dressed, hair had to be curled and you had to have your best clothes on and
wow,
before we opened our presents. And then, presents were done and then lunch was served in a certain way, or dinner was served in a certain way. And, everything was just controlled when he was home, down to the last everything,
yeah. So would
so
you,
we,
sorry, go ahead,
So we
Rose.
really didn't have any control. We didn't have any control over our life when he was home. My father, in the rest of the year, from spring to autumn, used to work away, sometimes up to a month away, and then he'd come home for a weekend, and then he'd go away. And we couldn't wait for him to leave because we could, be ourselves and breathe a sigh of relief. And when his car pulled up in the driveway, it was all, make sure everything was in its place and rush around the house, and there was no dust anywhere, and all the toys were put away, and our, beds were made, and the dishes were all done. And
Yeah, so that was
because he
very
was not only
much,
abusive, He's not only
Yeah.
abusive to me, but he was, violent to my mother, and he's violent to my brother. So, we all
Yeah.
lived in fear of him.
Yeah, I was going to say it definitely sounded as though it was a very controlling and a home environment that was felt unsafe, and you weren't really
Absolutely.
allowed to just experience being a child in
No.
that sort of. So looking at your home life, so we, not feeling safe. What else was not present for you as children, I guess, that you would expect in a home and within a
Our
family?
mother, basically. Our mother. My mother was, I was her mother from the age of about 6,
Okay.
pretty much. I was the grown up in the house from about 6 years old. Mum she married young, and she never grew up, basically. And my mother still has never grown up. Even now, she's like 80 something. So,
Okay. So would you,
or
is
70
that,
something.
yeah, okay. Was that something, so when you say she hasn't grown up, was that just something, was it a mental health, or was it just just
I don't know. I think
a trauma? Did she
she had to
experience
get
any sort of
married.
trauma?
Yeah. I think, well, she was one of those 50s, that had to get married because she got pregnant with me. So she was forced to marry.
Yeah.
Um, she thought she was in love with my father, but she soon worked out that she wasn't, because he used to bash the Jesus out of her
Yes.
for any tiny infringement, if something wasn't done. I mean, he'd never leave black eyes or anything, but he used to hit her a lot or yell at her. And the worst treatment that he ever gave any of us was the silent treatment. That was the worst treatment. Is he didn't speak to us for days at a time, and we knew that that we'd done something that was, had displeased him, but there was no way he'd speak to us. And that was the worst punishment, with the
Yes.
silent treatment. And,
Yeah.
I remember, in my teens, I had done something. He actually ripped the bedding off my bed and hid it somewhere, and made me kneel beside my bed for the whole night and apologise for this thing that I didn't even do. And I had school the next day, but I had to stay awake all night until I apologised. And it was freezing. It was the middle of winter in Australia, up in the Blue Mountains. And and so I just had to kneel beside the bed. And
Yeah.
it was just stuff like that that I had to grow up with. And it's
Mm.
just
Yeah.
it apart from the sexual
Definitely.
abuse.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, on top of the sexual abuse. So would you, yeah, that's, imagining that for a child is just so much to really, really bear, especially when you're trying to, just grow up, I guess,
Grow up
and just to
yourself.
experience life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say, so after he gave that silent treatment for a while, obviously that sense of control and control the emotions, I guess, and the functioning within the family. But after the silent treatment, did anything follow? What did he normally do after that?
Um, well, then he'd put on the nice face again, after we'd
Yeah.
apologised for whatever we were supposed to have done wrong. Then
Yeah.
he'd put on the Mr. Nice thing, So,
Yeah.
and it was just a cycle. It was like it,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
endured the sexual abuse from him till I was 14. So between 10 and 14, so that's 4 years. I mean, I lost my virginity to him. I became, promiscuous, I guess you could call it, because I thought sex and love were the same thing. I mean, father was supposed to have loved me, and
Yeah.
that was his way supposedly of showing love. So that's what I thought love was sex. And I was well into my 30s before I even realised that wasn't even the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a long time.
Absolutely. So when you say, at 14 it had stopped, what had made it stop? Was it just all of a sudden? I mean, obviously
I
a
ran
really
away
big
from
sense of
home.
relief. You ran away from
I ran
home.
away
Yeah.
from home. I
Yeah.
ran away from home. I went with a man. He was a man. He was about 5 or 6 years older than me. Um, I thought I was madly in love. Obviously,
Yeah.
at 14, you think you're in love with everybody.
Yeah.
Um, I thought he was going to save me from everything. And it turns out that even though he wasn't sexually abusive to me, he was still psychologically abusive. He made me afraid of the dark. He used to tell me these stories, and I believed him because I was so screwed up in the head that I believed the stuff that he was telling me. And it took me a long time to realize that the thing that he was telling me wasn't true. But I was still afraid of the dark well into my 40s. So,
Yeah.
that's a long time between 14 and 40.
Absolutely.
I was still, it was just,
Yeah.
I had I didn't have anyone to help me to heal at all. I did it all on my own. I didn't have
Yeah.
counselors. I didn't have
Yeah.
any, I didn't have a mother that would support me because she knew of the abuse. I told her when I was about 13 what was going on.
And
And
what
she
was
didn't
her,
really.
in looking at that,
Oh,
what do you think that if you had not run away, that the abuse would have continued?
absolutely. He told me that he would stop when I turned 16. But in the meantime, I'd already got my period. So, I could have gotten pregnant at any time,
Yeah. And with your,
but,
yes.
and because he knew I was seeing other boys, even I wasn't allowed to, he would have blamed one of them and not himself.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, I guess, something that we definitely can identify is common with those who live with their perpetrators, is that there is that that sense of how we could, when we start to have our periods, and that being that something that we have to worry about, of getting pregnant and by our perpetrator. And then of course with any
Mm,
boy who pays attention, that there is that sense of yes, if you fell pregnant, then they would be the first to blame. So when you mentioned with your mom, so you told her that the abuse was happening when you were 13, and it took a year, and then you ran away. So what was her initial reaction when you did disclose this to her, and how did she find out?
uh, she said she had an idea about it,
Hmm.
um, but she didn't really do anything because she was just as afraid of my father as the rest of us. So,
Yeah.
and she'd always make up the excuse, I don't have anywhere to go, I don't know anyone, and Dad had I don't know, when I was about 12, maybe 12 or 13, Dad had an industrial accident and nearly died. And she took me to the police station to tell the police about the abuse. I have no idea why, because he was supposed to be dying. So it made no sense. But I went anyway, because I had to tell somebody that, would believe me and would hopefully look after me.
Yeah. And
Anyway, as soon as my father got better, she made me go and recant the statement, for God's sake. So that's how supportive my mother was. She would rather look after her own backside than she would, look after her children. And I thought, well, I think that's when I started to get really angry with her. I didn't realize it then, but I realized it later in life. I think that's what started it, because she didn't support me.
yeah, and that's what
And she didn't
I
get me
was
any
going to ask.
counseling. She didn't do anything for me. She didn't do jack squat for me at all.
Yeah. And do you have a relationship? Is your mom still here, still alive?
She is. We were estranged for a very long time. I
Okay.
think I've only come back into her life recently because she was diagnosed with dementia, and my brother that lives here in Tassie he's got a young family, so he couldn't look after her fully, and it was just too much stress on him. So I sold up everything, or my husband and I sold up everything we had in Adelaide to move here. And as it turned out, I couldn't cope because my husband was not long after diagnosed with early stage dementia himself. So I couldn't live with them both. So we put mum in a home after discussion with my other two brothers.
Yeah.
So yeah, we put her in a home and she's happy there. So it initially started out as a respite, but she decided that she liked it there. So we just said, well, if she likes it there, she can stay there.
Yeah. So you had mentioned that you've obviously had to heal and take care of yourself and everything, and in your journey of life and with your healing, and you're a mother as well.
I've got 3 children. Yeah.
Yes. And how,
I love my kids
yes.
to bits. I love my kids to bits. My eldest daughter, we didn't have a bonding time, which is a bit, I think that's where our relationship has fallen down a little bit. But I do know that through the traumas that I've experienced, I have complex PTSD, I have bipolar, and I have emotional dysfunction disorder, which have been diagnosed by a psychiatrist. And because I have these disorders, I was not emotionally available there for my children. And that has affected them in the way that they relate to others, which is unfortunate. And that's the thing that hurts me the most about everything that's happened to me, is that I don't have the relationship with with my children that I would like to have.
Yeah.
Sorry, I always get emotional when I talk about that.
It's okay. They mean the world to you, I'm sure.
They do.
Yeah.
And we're working on it. My
That's
son and I are
beautiful.
very close.
Yeah.
But my daughters have felt the emotional distance a lot more than my son has. So, and my eldest daughter, of course, she was expected to do quite a lot as a child because I was expected to. I just assumed that was the right thing to do.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't have any role models myself growing up, so I just did what I thought was the right thing.
Yeah.
It turned out that it wasn't, but I
So
did the
when
best
did
I could.
so what happened to, as you said, you were doing the things that you thought were the way they were supposed to be, and being a mother, and having your oldest daughter, um, you know, basically take care of things around the house, and I guess with you and her growing up a bit quicker, which is something
Yeah.
you experienced. And so when did that change where you realize that it isn't the way it's supposed to be? What was there something that
I get
happened?
my kids pulled me up and said, um, just laid the truth of the table for me, because I could never understand why they were angry with me. I thought I'd always done the right thing by them. If I thought because I had been there, taken them to sports and and stuck up for them at school and all those sorts of things, and been to hospitals and whatever. I thought that was the right thing. I didn't realise that I hadn't been giving of my heart, even though that I loved them so much.
Yeah.
So they actually had a meeting with me one day and just laid it on the line because um, they were worried about my drinking, because I used to drink a lot. I used to drink a lot. I'm now over 3 years sober, so I'm really happy about that.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. That's a massive achievement.
It is, yeah. But I used to drink every single night. I was a nightly binge drinker. And I'll get up and go to work the next day. So, I'd never drink on the job, but
but come back and do it again. Yeah, so it was a cycle as well. And would you say, so you were basically present and doing the physical things for them, showing up and being there, but as you said, that emotional attachment, or that emotional, being there emotionally for them, was something that you weren't able to do. And would you say that was because it wasn't given to you or shown to you as well growing up as a child?
Absolutely. Well, I didn't know what a mother was supposed to do. There's no book that tells you that you're supposed to hug your children. That's all right. That don't tell you that you're supposed to hug your children. I just didn't know that. I'd hug them when they were asleep, or I'd look at them, and cry because I just was so cute, but I didn't know that I had to actually tell them that I loved them and hug them all the time. And I just didn't know how to go about doing that either, because I was so trying to heal myself. There's like when my youngest was quite small, there's 3 months of my life I don't even know what I was doing. I was in such a dark place.
So you were basically in that fight or flight, and you were just getting
I was
through
just surviving. I don't know where my children were. I don't know who looked after them. I don't know who cooked the meals. I don't know. I remember getting up in the whatever time of the day. My husband bought me a keyboard. I'd play that all day. I couldn't play to save myself, but I just kept playing this song, all these songs over and over again.
Wow.
But I don't ever remember him coming home. I don't know who cooked the meals. And that's went on for 3 or 4 months. I just don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a total blank to me. And then all of a sudden I came out of it. I don't know how I came out of it either. So,
So with that keyboard, what was the keyboard? What did that do for you? And why did he go out and buy you a keyboard? Was it just something he saw at the shop and picked up, or was it something you asked for?
I don't know.
Yeah. And what did that?
Home one day.
Yeah, and playing it, what did that do for you today?
It made me happy. It made me happy.
Just hearing the sound.
Yeah, I couldn't. If I wasn't at the keyboard, then I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really weird. I mean, child sexual abuse and all the abuse, psychological, physical, emotional abuse, really does so much harm to children. It really ruins them forever. It really does. And unless they get some help early, and I mean early, as soon as the abuse has been detected, to me, in my mind, they're damaged for the rest of their life. As much as they try to heal themselves, they are damaged.
Yeah.
And that's my personal perspective, but I'm still damaged, and I'm still trying to work out how to love myself. I still don't love myself the way I should. I still have imposter syndrome. I still have self-doubt. I still have lots of the things that a woman my age, I'm 61 years old, and I should be a heap more confident with myself. I should be a lot further in life than I am, because sometimes I'm just so afraid that, that I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of the things that are given to me. Excuse me, universe, you're not supposed to hear that, but I just don't feel worthy, because it's just something that's so ingrained into you. And if it's been proven scientifically that if you're abused and told that you're not worthy up until the age of 7, after that you might as well just give up, because you're programmed. If you're programmed before 7 to believe you're not worthy, you'll believe that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really reprogramming that our way of thinking, isn't it?
And I've
And
tried cognitive therapy and all that, and it's just even the psychiatrist couldn't break through. You know, he just said, I have to give up on you, Rose, because I can't get through to you.
well, and so that leads you again back into you having to take the steps to make it happen,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, I guess I'll you know, if we're to identify what was the lowest point for you where you knew you had to change the way you were, you know, I guess when we're looking at the alcohol drinking and excuse me, I seem to have something in my throat.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at when was the lowest point for you where you knew that something had to change?
I think it's when I was just about to turn 50. I think even though I was still drinking, I was doing like really weird things. Of spending so much money. We were bankrupt. And you know, most of that was my fault, because I just used to spend money like it was going out of fashion. I had like 3 credit cards, and you know, just so much debt.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, I actually had to go and see a psychiatrist and get medicated to calm my bipolar down, because you know, I just used to do the most stupidest things, you know, dangerous things that you know that you see on you know, Facebook with, you know, the memes, you know, why women live longer than men. And I used to do things like that, you know, put ladders on buckets because the ladder wasn't tall enough, or on bricks, or you know, just stuff. It's just stuff.
Yeah, just
It had
things
to
to
stop
get
because
risky behavior.
yeah, absolutely, it was
Yeah.
just stupid. And you know, suicide attempts, and just, you know, cutting myself. I mean, I didn't cut myself since I was about 21 or 22, but and I had a suicide attempt in my early 40s, and you know, in my 50s. I said, well, all this rubbish just has to stop. You know, I was losing my children totally, and you know, my husband, as much as he loves me, he couldn't see me. He couldn't see my pain, and and I needed him to see what I was going through.
Yeah, so that's those attempts and the risky behaviors were those, would you say, were those cries out for help and trying to get that attention of, hey,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, in my teen years, when I tried to commit suicide, I was called an attention seeker.
yeah,
You know, but there were cries out because no one would see me. No one would see my pain. I was in so
absolutely.
much pain, and
It is such a
you know,
silent, it is such a I guess, you know, it's child sexual abuse is such a, you know, the scars and the bruising is very deep within that. Nobody does see it. I mean, it's such a thing that is nobody wants to talk about. No one wants to, you know, you can't see it when it's happening because it's hidden behind closed doors. Children are told to be quiet and shut up. So that's even more so just buries it and hides it, and that people have the illusion that it's not happening as often and to as many people that it really is. And you know, if I'm looking at support being really fundamental for a survivor, who are you grateful for in your life who has been a massive support to you?
I think once my husband saw the pain that I was in, and he could actually understand it, I think he's probably been my greatest supporter.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And
We actually had a domestic violence relationship early on in our marriage.
yeah,
It was mainly caused through alcohol, but he was brought up in a society where women did as they were told, and if they didn't, they'd get a backhander.
yeah.
And I was very strong-willed and, told him that, that's not how our relationship's going to be. So we used to fight a lot.
Yeah.
And then one day I had one of my meltdowns and I just smashed all the furniture in our bedroom. And so if I ever got angry ever again, raised my voice, he'd go and hide somewhere and just give me space to be angry. And
Yeah.
so then he learned that really I was actually expressing my pain, and I needed him to hug me and not fight with me. And so he has done that now. And so now that and people say, well, why did you stay with someone who bashed you? But I guess I look at it this way, that because he grew up not very well either. He left home when he was 14 and he didn't have any role models either. So we actually grew up together, I think, through our marriage.
Yeah. So sorry, Rose. So would you say that you've learned a couple of things, from him? What were some of the really positive things, I guess, that you learned from him that you were able to apply within yourself and your way of thinking or doing things in life?
I think to express anger in a non-violent way. It taught me that. And I don't need to throw things or just be violent. I don't.
Yeah.
And that took a long time. But now if I get crapped out, we'll separate rooms now, and or if he gets angry, we'll just go in different rooms, and then we'll come together and we'll discuss it, and we'll have a hug and we'll hug it out.
Yeah. And what does that bring for you? What does that bring from you? You're thinking about it, the total, the two separate things. What does that bring for you now, being able to work through your
brings me peace
anger.
And brings me joy, because I know that I'm loved, totally, for warts and all.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a different sort of, you're getting that human touch, that hug, but that safe hug and that gentle, safe.
Yeah, he makes me feel safe.
Beautiful.
And even when we were fighting, I was always safe with him. I was never really in danger of any real harm. A lot of his was just because he didn't know how to express his anger either.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. That's beautiful. That's wonderful.
I always felt safe with him.
So happy for you to have somebody who loves you and supports you and makes you feel safe now, and that's that journey of healing that is really fundamental, is having support, having somebody to help you to get through it, to help you to change the way we think, and to have that support, because yes, we can do it. We've done so much on our own, but to be able to let that load off of our shoulders and allow someone to help us is massive, because then we can relax and feel that peace and that joy, as you said, which is, would you say that would be, is the ultimate when it comes to healing and working on self? That is the ultimate, I guess, where we really want to be.
Is because a child who is sexually abused obviously doesn't feel safe when they've worked out. Because I worked out at about 12 that what was happening to me just wasn't the right thing. So I never felt safe. And through all my relationships, I always had the feeling that I was going to be left. I was never good enough. And, most of the time I wasn't, because I was so needy. I just needed more than they could give me, because I didn't get it as a child. And people don't understand what we go through as survivors of abuse.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if it's just sexual abuse, that's fine, but then you've got all of the other abuses as well. And it really plays with your head.
Absolutely. And would you say, Regarding sorry, Rose, just going back to the physical, and having all these emotional, psychological, sexual, and when it comes to long term in life, what have you noticed? Obviously, you've got the diagnosis of PTSD, bipolar. Um, what have you noticed you have now in life you have because of the child sexual abuse? We're talking about physically. What do you notice around relationships with others? Is there anything that you can share on that?
I think I'm a lot more guarded with people, and I don't let people in easily. I think it's because you don't want to be hurt.
Mm,
I've let people get close to me, and I've ended up being on the bad end of the stick. So over time, I've closed myself off from that, and only slowly let people in. But more recently, I think after I was encouraged to write a chapter in a book about my life, or about my sexual abuse, I'm now wanting to go out into the world, I guess, and help, especially young survivors,
yeah,
because I think they're the ones that we need to reach. They're the ones who I believe need the healing more than the ones that have been through it and have done the journey. Not saying that we don't need the healing, but I think they need it before it gets to the point where they have become what we have become.
yeah.
They need to have that childhood. They need to,
So they can have that
you know,
healing. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And that's where I guess that it's looking at what, because of the child sexual abuse, they say basically looking at, if anyone was to look on the internet and see what were the long-term effects and impacts of child sexual abuse on a person, they do have a list of the physical, mental, negative impacts that will happen long term. So, such as fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, having, obviously suicide, criminal activity, and all that. So, looking at diabetes, heart disease, I mean, it's
yeah,
it's such a disease causing disease, how it
yeah.
impacts, and it just steals from a person
Steals your
their.
life away.
It does. It steals. And especially the
It steals
longer
your
it
life.
takes to heal, the more impact it has, the greater impact it has, and the negative impact it has on a
Yeah.
person's life long term. So, is there anything that you experience, because of it physically, because of it?
Yeah, I've got chronic fibromyalgia. Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
chronic fibromyalgia,
And for those
and
who don't know what
my flare up
fibromyalgia,
this time has been.
yeah, and what does that do for
It's
your
a
body?
pain disorder. Well, with my body, it I can't be touched physically in many places because it really hurts to be touched. Um, but fibromyalgia is different for different people. There are like 10 points in your body that if you touch them, you're supposed to have fibromyalgia. Mine are mainly between my waist and my knees. And I've had it for more than 20 years. But in the last month, I've had a real bad flare up, and I don't know where it's come from, and I can't get rid of it. So it's driving me
Wow.
insane.
Yeah.
But there are other things like depression, a chronic pain. I mean, child sexual abuse can bring on autoimmune diseases like fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis, or lots of those other things.
Yeah.
Fibromyalgia is to do with nerve. Also, they think it's to do with nerve pain, because they don't know what the cause of it is, and
No, it's one
so
of those
they don't know
mysteries,
what the
isn't
cause
it?
is. There's no cure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone misdiagnosed for such a long time, and it causes things like chronic fatigue and bad
Yeah.
appetite and irritable bowel syndrome and
Yeah.
celiac disease, and
Yes.
such a range of things. Just to have this one disease causes so many others.
It
And
does, doesn't it?
and but
Yeah.
people just look at you. Well, you look well.
Yeah.
Oh yes, but I'm in a bit of pain today. But you look well.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah. I mean, because we're good
you
at putting on
do.
that we're good at hiding what's really happening because of the child sexual abuse
Yeah,
of that,
yeah,
being a child and having to hide what was happening, especially finding out that it wasn't good. It causes that sense of like, oh my gosh, that shame and that guilt. So we've got to cover it up because we
absolutely,
don't want people to know. So
absolutely.
this the same with when we're unwell, we just put on a smile and we just keep doing. So,
Yeah, especially if they tell you the fibromyalgia only in your brain. I was told that by
oh,
a rheumatologist. It's in your brain. Well, yeah,
yes.
it is in my brain, but he didn't explain himself as to how it's in my brain. He
Yes,
just made me sound like
exactly.
I was crazy.
Yeah, no, we're definitely not crazy, that's for sure. And a lot of survivors end up being diagnosed with bipolar also and ADHD. So those are there are misdiagnoses that I've heard of, and of people who, they get confused because obviously with the fight or flight, when a child is not safe, they're going to constantly move around. They're going to try to, they don't have that sense of, okay, let me just relax, feel peaceful and calm because I feel loved. We don't experience that. We're on that, okay, he's home, I need to make sure
No, we
everything
don't
is.
have that. We don't know what it's like.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Rose, you're such a beautiful
We
soul, and
just
I
don't know.
really, really thank you so much for sharing. But if you're to, I just got two more questions for you because I think that you're just such an amazing person and sharing your story. And it's such a blessing. And I know that I really hope that it blesses others to be able to encourage them to speak out. But who has been, if you could name one person who has inspired you in some way, who would you say that is?
I think me. I've inspired
Uh,
myself.
that's beautiful. So you're your own hero, basically.
I am because,
That's
well,
fantastic.
I mean, and it sounds vain. It really does
No,
sound vain,
I
but
get it.
I've helped myself through my journey. And I think I deserve a lot of kudos for getting myself to this point where I can actually come on a program like this. I went on, 2 international speaking platforms to speak on it. Um, so yeah, I'm doing all right,
You are, you
and
are.
except for
You,
talking about my kids,
yeah, definitely. You're such an
I think I am
inspiration.
a hero.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think
And
I'm
this
my
is
own
your
hero.
way. This is your way of leaving your legacy, isn't it? By speaking up. Yeah, and
It is,
sharing your
yep. Because I
story.
really do want to help other people.
Yeah,
I
that's
really do want to
beautiful.
help other people.
Very beautiful. And if you had one message to share with someone who is afraid or, to who's not sure about, I guess, taking the next step to sharing their story or to healing or to, I guess, changing the way the road that they're on that isn't that is destructive because of child sexual abuse, what's the message that you could share to them right now?
I think um, I would encourage people to seek help, seek like-minded people who have experienced this, the trauma that we as survivors have experienced. I know they're going to see counsellors or rape crisis centres and whatever. A lot of those are young people and have never had family members that they know of, or have had no experience of the traumas that we've been through. So you have to find like-minded people like us,
Yeah.
who we're a unique breed, I guess you could say.
Yes.
And so you need to,
Unfortunately, but it's
yeah,
great.
reach out to those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are an unfortunate, we are a unique breed. It is unfortunate, but find support groups in your city, in your region, on Facebook, on the internet, anywhere that are supportive, and they don't allow trolls in there, because trolls are, you know, one of the worst people to have around you, because you just don't need them.
No,
But yeah,
that's right.
that would be my advice. As I said, counsellors and psychiatrists and psychologists sometimes are not the best people to go and see, because they've not lived through it. And each of us has our own experience, and we have our own story, and it's impacted us in different ways. No two people have been impacted the same way.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just need to find that support group, and that's
Yeah.
all I can encourage, and that would be the advice that I would give.
Absolutely, that's great. And you know, yes, you know, it's I always tell people that our experiences are all unique, but what is the same is that emotion, that hurt, that shame, that guilt that we carry for so many
Yes.
years, and healing through that. We are walking that same journey, and just really wanting to get through it, and to heal, and to feel better, and to have that hope that it's going to be okay, and it's going to get better. So just one more question, Rose, before you, or just basically, yeah, it's for you, but if you, looking back at where you are today and yourself when you were little, you know, what would you say to yourself from the
To my
heart?
younger self,
Yeah, to your younger self from the heart.
I would say to my younger self, go and run and go and live with Nanny. Go and live with your grandmother. Do not stay at home. My grandmother was the best, and if she knew what was happening to me, she would have done
Yeah.
a lot.
So she was a bit of your
When she found
inspiration.
out, she was devastated. Yeah, when
Yeah.
she found out, she was devastated. It broke her heart
Yeah.
to know that I had been put through that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so yeah, I would have.
Yeah. So no child,
Yes,
obviously, we
I
never
would.
want.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah. Thank you, Rose. And definitely no one should ever experience child sexual abuse, and never, you know, their childhood stolen away from them. And I thank you so
No.
much for sharing your story, being vulnerable, being real and open, and sharing your truth. And, you know, I send you so much encouragement and blessings for you in your healing journey and your future. And I will share Rose's information of what she does in her professional life and how she helps others in her community. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us here today on Empowered Survivors TV, where we are speaking the truth because it is time to heal. I'm Rebecca Sowers. Have a good day. Thank you.